Hello, everybody, and welcome to our live stream today. This is May 2nd. Can you believe that? Oh my goodness. I think April was the longest month I've ever had in my life. We're in May. Let's see how long May is going to be. April was beautiful, though. It was a beautiful month. Nice month. Let's see who's on here today. Bunches of people. Yay. So this is a live interview. That means that you can interact. And the way that you interact is through the chat. And you can ask questions or make comments. You can talk to each other. But if you want to ask a question of me or of my special guest here, Romi Hill, you will need to put the word question in all caps and then write out your question. And I'll address it to her during the conversation. If you've never joined me before, my name's Suzanne Bryan, and I like to do these live interviews of people who are inspirational to me as knitters, and I think that they'll inspire you too. So let's just see who's here. Diana Danko, hello. Debbie Wood from Royal Oak, Michigan. Judy Joyce from Bakersfield. Champ Smith from New York. Elizabeth Nielsen from Sweden. Sylvia Earle from Cameron Park, Francoise from Lyon, France, Valerie Jones from Broomfield, Colorado, Deborah Cisneros from California, Fatima from Portugal, Kurt Payne from New Zealand, Dolise from Washington, Sheila Orienter from Connecticut, Evelyn from Bakersfield, Catherine Continental Combined from Berlin, Eva Matus from Scotland, Leah Leo from Italy, Amanda from Bakersfield, E.T. Guerrero from Hawaii, aloha, Margit from Germany, Signa from North Carolina, Nada from Oman, Sue Meti from Fresno, Mountain Moms from Flagstaff, and Mountain Moms is Deborah. Rona Shane from Southern California, Pamela Matthews from Washington, Carolyn Nichols from Kingsburg, Julie Hertel from St. Joe, Missouri, Sharon Higgins from Omaha, Judy from Bakersfield, Frida from Bismarck, Sue Mills from New Zealand, Carol Desrochers from Michigan, Teresa Bound from Maryland. Yay! Hello, everybody. I'm sure there'll be more people on here in a minute. We have such a worldwide community. It's so darn fun. So today, my special guest over here is Romi Hill, and what she loves is lace knitting is her forte. And so she spends a lot of time experimenting and trying new things and pushing the boundaries for herself and for her knitters. And I'm sure many of you have seen her beautiful, beautiful designs all over Ravelry. She has so many and they are just gorgeous. So Romi, I'm going to ask you the same thing I ask everybody, and that is, what brought you to knitting and how did you end up coming to lace knitting in particular?
That is a long story.
Okay.
So I'm from a crafty family, and my mother and my grandmother raised me, and they were crocheters. So I learned to crochet, I think, around the time I learned to read. And I begged and begged my mother for years to teach me how to knit. And finally, when I was 9, she relented. And she taught me how to cast on and knit and purl and bind off. And I had all these terrible habits. I mean, I didn't know that I was a combined knitter and, all this stuff. She taught me how to throw, and her fingers were a lot longer than mine. I have little kind of short, stubby fingers. So I would have to put the needles down and throw the yarn over, and it was really slow. But I persisted, and I actually knit through high school, and I knit through college, and I was a musician, and I also worked in the recording studio. So one of my jobs was that I was supposed to sit there and listen to everybody's recital as I was making copies. So that's like hours and hours of time just sitting there. So I used to knit. And I just used to go to the local yarn store and grab whatever was in the bargain bin because we're a student.
Yes.
I didn't have very much money.
I remember
and then I
that.
just kind of make something up. So, and I guess like I didn't really know I wasn't supposed to do that. So I'd make stuff up and it usually fit. So I guess you could say that those were my first designs. And I used to be a real sweater knitter, just like everything was a sweater except for my first thing that I knit, and that was a mohair scarf. So I still have a love of mohair that has stayed with me all these years. And, I kind of knit on and off and on and off. And then when I was pregnant with my second son, I was so sick to my stomach, I could not get off the couch. So I thought, okay, well, I have yarn and needles in the closet, so I'm just going to start knitting again. And by that time, the internet knitting community was huge and amazing. And I found this traditional knitters group called Knitting Beyond the Hebrides. And for anybody who was a huge Alice Starmore fan, you probably know about that group. It used to be Alice Starmore Knitters, I think, until she made them change their name. So there are all these amazing knitting traditions, and I was still pretty poor. So the thing that really appealed to me was lace knitting, not only from how the aspect of the amazing stitches, but also you could get like one skein of lace weight yarn and make something amazing, and it had all that knitting time in there. So I went to my first Stitches West, and by that time my son had been born, and he rode around in my backpack. And I actually bought my first lace weight yarn from Skaska Designs. And so that was like my big Stitches West purchase. And I decided I wanted to make something that I would really love and want to wear. So I chose this ridiculously difficult shawl that was like a square Shetland shawl. So a lace center, and then you pick up all the stitches around it, and then you have lace patterning on both sides and a knitted on edging, and then you have to graft at the end. They have to graft the edging together. And my husband read me Harry Potter and like the kids Harry Potter that whole time, and I think it took like 3 Harry Potter books to get through it. But by the time I was finished with that shawl, I could do all these things that I never knew existed before. And I sort of started my love of lace.
Yes.
So I guess, and then I kind of went backwards into the business because I tend to kind of move quickly. So it would always, they would like come off my shoulders. So I made a shawl pin, and then I was all proud of it. So I took it down to my local yarn store and I said, look, I made a shawl pin. And she said, oh, well, if you make more of them, I'll sell them. So I started making shawl pins. And then I needed to have something to put the shawl pins on. So I started doing some designs. So kind of roundabout way.
That's interesting.
Of getting into it.
Yeah, I didn't know about the shawl pins.
Yeah.
Interesting. So what was the first design that you did that was your design?
So my first lace design it appeared in Knitty, knitty.com, and it was called Muir, and it's a lace stole in mohair, of course. So it's a really open kind of pattern with a lot of lattice work in there and leaves. And some people thought that the leaves looked kind of like the Star Trek symbol, like the little A. So a lot of Trekkies knit it. And it was like, oh, look, this looks kind of like Star Trek.
Oh, you found a knit group. Yeah.
I'm a nerd at heart, so that was really good.
So,
I grew up on Star Trek reruns.
getting your work into Knitty isn't all that easy. So it must have been very nice. What was the process of submitting and all that?
It was um it was pretty it was pretty good, actually. I mean, I really like Amy a lot. She's awesome. I actually didn't know her at all then, but so I was like, okay, I'm going to take really good pictures so she'll really want to publish it. And I ended up getting on the cover, which was
Wow,
pretty cool.
that is very
And
amazing.
yeah, so it was really straightforward.
Hmm.
And yeah, I didn't have any problems. So I tend to like try to do more rather than less if I'm unsure of how things are going to work out. So I tried to make it really perfect and nice photos and everything. So
Well, getting on Knitty and being on the cover is huge because she has such a huge audience. And even I'm sure
yeah.
that was quite a few years ago, but still at that time, that was because it was free to look at everything,
Hmm.
Um, she had a huge audience. I remember that Cookie A, remember Cookie A, her first design was on
Yes.
Knitty, you know, and
Yes.
and she just took off like crazy because of that. I'm sure it helped your
She
career
did.
also a lot.
Oh yeah, that's where I got my start. Absolutely. I
Mhm.
mean, there are a lot of us like Isolda and Stephen West and Cookie A and Gudrun Johnston and
Mhm.
like all of these designers, Stephanie Chappell. Like our first designs were on Knitty.
Exactly.
So
And then you
yeah.
became a super.
So now I'm a patron
Yeah.
because it's such a great magazine. It is such a great
It
resource.
is. It is. I
So
took a class at the first Sock Summit up in Portland. I took a class
yes.
from Amy, and it was just about Knitty, and how she started it and all that stuff. But there were some people in the class. There was one lady in particular that had something she wanted to show Amy to see if it could possibly go into the magazine. And it was those skew socks. I don't know if you remember them.
Yes, I do
Yes,
remember.
she was in my class. And that's where Amy first saw the skew socks, and she was like, "Oh my god, I absolutely have to have
Wow.
those." And it was very fun, very fun. She's so
That is so
encouraging.
cool.
Yes, yes. So let's see what you have to show. What would you like to show us?
Well, since you took my class and you have that beautiful little shawlette on
Yes.
that has the mosaic knitting, I thought I'd show you some of my mosaic designs. Um,
This was the class sample in the class. And it has this,
mhm.
it starts out at this area here and works down, and then you do the mosaic, is the last portion of it. It was so fun to knit, I couldn't stop. It was a
I
blast.
love the yarns that you chose too. It gives it a little extra, like that little pop there. It's really
Yeah, and
neat.
this was just a yarn. This is actually the biscotti yarn that has the stripes. And I actually broke it apart and used the colors that I wanted where I wanted. So I changed it up. I
Very
didn't
cool.
follow the yarn exactly. The mosaic, I'd followed the yarn. But then when I want these solid stripes here, I just broke the yarn up and used the colors as I wanted them to appear rather than following the pattern in the yarn. It came
It
out
looks
pretty.
really cool.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so
I like
let's
it.
see. Let's see the mosaic work.
Okay, so this is Simee Dimeh. So I'm
Wow,
trying to hold it a little still,
that
and it
looks good.
has a little bit of lace in it too.
Mm-hmm.
So up at the top here, it has the texture, and then some more. It has 7 colors in it, and it was a special Miss Babs kit. So lots and lots of fun to knit. I really enjoyed doing this one. I had a mammoth swatch for it.
That is so
It was
fun because
huge.
it changes. You never get bored. And not only does it change the yarn, but it changes the stitch pattern. There's some lace, some texture, some mosaic knitting. Very
Hmm.
fun, fun.
Like all sorts of stuff.
What's the
Here.
name of that one again?
Simee Dimeh. It's Simeedimeh.
Okay,
And it's a mountain pass near where I live.
okay,
So it is a Native American language. It means double springs.
and all
And
of these are available on Ravelry,
this
right?
is Washoe land.
Yes, all of them
I'm
are
sorry, say that
available on
again.
Ravelry. You can buy all your patterns on Ravelry, right?
Yes,
Yes. Okay.
yes. Well, not every single one because my lace book that I did, um, those patterns are not available on Ravelry, but the book is available on Amazon or other bookstores and also on the Interweave site,
And
which I think is now Penguin Random House, but
something, yeah.
I'm not sure how they've done that.
Me neither. Do
So
you have a copy of that book to show?
I do. That is what it looks like. So it's called New Lace Knitting. And I'm trying to hold this really still so you can see,
It's
and
very
there's no
nice.
glare or anything. So the idea behind the book was that I chose different traditional lace patterns and made them part of more modern designs. And it's kind of like an everyday sort of lace book. So there are designs in there that have a little tiny bit of lace, and then others that are all over lace. And they're all named after kind of local places or local concepts. And I put a few little puns in there because I can't help myself. Um, this one is called Talus. And it's part of the ripple category, so it's a lot like the old shale pattern.
Mm-hmm.
And talus is actually shale
Right.
that's fallen down and is sort of by a cliff.
Mm-hmm.
So that one it's patterned after a hap shawl. So if you look at the back of it, see if I'll get the picture. The back of it here, it has like a triangular back, and that back part is built like a shawl.
Like it's
So
almost like a little peplum.
I had fun with it. Yeah, but it's like a nice flattering
And then
look, I think.
you're in Kate Davies' Hap Shawl book, aren't you?
I am, yes, yeah.
Let's see.
That was I don't have that one like around here. I could go diving for it, but
I have it somewhere. I may find it.
that was a lot of fun.
Yes, yes.
That was a fun book.
It was a challenge.
Yeah, I did that one out of Elemental Effects yarn, and they're an American producer. Like she has a lot of wool from Montana, and it's a Shetland herd, and so she gets it spun up and dyes it. And I thought it was kind of fun to do that American Shetland for the book.
Right.
So.
Beautiful, beautiful. Now, the shawl that you did for Knitty, that's also available on Ravelry, right?
It is, and it's available through Knitty. So I've actually done a few shawls for Knitty now. So there's the Muir, and then there was Bitterroot and Geschenk.
Mm-hmm.
And Muir and Bitterroot, those were super, super popular. And but all three of them are still available through Knitty. So, and they're still free.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
Well, I know for years and years, and even still, if you go to Ravelry and look at the most popular designs, yours are always in there. It's always your beautiful
Oh, thank
shawls,
you.
you know. You start feeling like they're your friends after a while.
Aw, thank you.
Okay, let's see what you have to
So,
show next.
so I kind of went through a tough time in my life, and I'm working on an ebook right now, and it's called 9 Lives, and there's 9 shawl patterns for changing times. And it has sort of a story behind it. So this is the first pattern in that. So this one is called Seismic, and thought you'd be interested in the mosaic.
It's beautiful.
So this one is it's gray and gold, and the book is sort of built on the concept of gray and gold because of like sort of my history with those colors just being comfort for me. So this was the first one. And then this one.
Oh, beautiful.
That one is Harmonize.
Wow.
And this was sort of a little geek out for me because there's a diamond pattern in here. And I don't know if you can see the stitch pattern here, but there are running stitches that go from the lace into the slip stitch section.
That's awesome. Look at how they match up from the lace across the slip stitch back to the lace again.
Yeah.
It's a continuous flow.
So,
wow, geek out. Yes, that's awesome. I love that.
I love the little details.
Yes.
I'm such a geek.
Yes. Well, that's the way I am with knitting sweaters. Like, I don't think that the ribbing should just be an add-on. I think the ribbing should flow into the sweater, into the design, be connected to it, not like you just cut off the sweater and sewed on the ribbing. You know?
Exactly. I totally agree.
Yeah.
It's those little tiny things that make patterns and designs come together and look professional and beautiful.
Right.
So you don't always notice them when you're walking by, but it makes such a huge difference. Even if you don't really consciously notice it, you sort of notice there's something
it's harmonious.
Not quite right.
Yeah, well, it's right. And if you do connect them, they're harmonious. It's like one grows out of the other versus somebody just cutting two pieces of fabric and connecting them together with no rhyme or reason. It's like buying a dress that has a design and it doesn't match at the seams. You know, those always, you know what I mean?
Yes. So I actually have kind of a funny story about that because my mother made all of my clothes when I was growing up. And she always matched the pattern at the seam. She always bought extra and she always got it matched. And my friends would wear all of these clothes with mismatched pattern at the seam. And I thought that was better because they went out and bought the clothes.
And you had couture. Your mother was a couture, you know.
Yeah. So I actually asked her not to match the pattern at the seam because, you know, she would put a pocket on and the pocket would be perfectly matched in the plaid and the flowers would be, everything would be perfectly matched up. And I was like, Mom, please don't do that. You know, it looks really different.
That's so funny. Oh, now you know better.
Yep, now I know better. Yeah. So, okay, onward. So I'm actually not really showing that much lace today as it happens. This is another pattern that I'm working on right now.
Wow.
So this is Freia Fibers yarn. And she has these just amazing gradient yarns.
That's gorgeous.
I've actually, thank you. I've actually been working on this for a while and trying to find the exact perfect way to end it because, I mean, in honor of the wool, you know, it has to be absolutely perfect. So this one is also going to be in my current ebook subscription.
That is gorgeous.
Yeah, it's just squishy and wonderful, and I love the colors. So
now, Evelyn has asked a question. Evelyn says, "Do you use lifelines?"
You know, I don't, unless I'm going to swatch in the middle of a shawl, which I do sometimes. Or I think I might run out of yarn or something, and then it's just easier to pick up. But as luck would have it, I have actually messed myself up more using lifelines than I've saved myself.
Mm-hmm.
So I used to tend to kind of drop stitches trying to get the lifeline through.
Oh yeah.
So, however, I know people who totally swear by them and who apparently are better coordinated than I am. So, yeah.
Well, I don't use lifelines either unless I know I'm at a decision point that I might change back. Like I'm
Yes.
trying something and I'm thinking, what if it doesn't work out? I don't want to rip this out. I don't want to lose all these stitches.
Yeah.
At the same point too, in lace, sometimes, just if you have a lot of markers on your needle and stuff, to getting a lifeline through without affecting the markers, you get the markers caught in the lifeline. To me, it's almost a little bit more pain in the neck than it's worth it. But on the other hand,
Yes.
I don't have a fear of fixing mistakes. I feel comfortable
Right.
fixing mistakes. So I think you have to
Yeah.
make a lot of mistakes is the deal. You have to just keep making those mistakes and figuring out how to fix them until you feel confident. And then you stop worrying about making mistakes because if you do, you can fix them. And so you're not stressing out so much
I
about making
totally
mistakes.
agree. Yeah, I
Yeah.
totally agree. That first project that I was talking about earlier,
Mhm.
so this was before I could read lace and compare it to the chart. And so I ended up ripping the entire thing out, and I must have ripped it out about 16 times. Like no joke.
Right.
Because I couldn't tell from my pattern where I was
Oh, yeah.
in the chart.
Hmm.
So I would rip it out and then I'd try to compare it to the chart and I just would say forget it. So in that case, a lifeline would have been really good. And so I do actually have tips if you are going to use a lifeline. And that is, I always use dental floss and I use the non-waxed kind because the wax can melt. Like, for instance, if you leave your knitting in the car, it will actually melt and
Oh,
get
my.
into your knitting.
Yuck.
And yeah, it can be pretty nasty. And it's also really thin, so it's easy to pull in and out of the stitches. So just take a really long piece and use a blunt tapestry needle to put it through all of your stitches. And it's best to do it after a resting row. In other words, like if you're patterning only
Right.
on one side and then you have a purl row or a knit row, you want to do it after that resting row because it's much easier when you're going to pick it up later.
Right.
And I actually do just go straight through the markers and then I put more markers on as I keep knitting. I just replace them because then if I'm going to rip it back to that point, I will have my markers where they were
You can see
in that
both.
row on the chart.
Right.
And then don't forget to look underneath and make sure that everything is correct up to that point. And then also don't forget to mark on your chart where you put the lifeline in. Because
Oh,
it's frustrating to knit, like rip back and then, oh wait, I don't remember where my lifeline was. I have done that. So
right.
yeah, so those are my little tips. And also, don't forget to tie the lifeline up. So make a knot so it can't come out of the stitches. Just so it's extra long, just make a little knot so it will stay in there regardless of what. So
Now, Dee Verity has a question. This is a good question. She says, not about your knitting. She says, is Knitty Magazine still being published? I do believe it is.
yes,
Yes, yes.
yes, they are. Yes,
It's
and they're still wonderful, and they have a Patreon account, and so they still have all these great free patterns, and I am actually a patron now because I feel like I wouldn't have my career without them.
mhm.
So yeah, they're still there. They're still putting out great patterns and articles, and they're actually just right now they've done an entire overhaul of their site to sort of build it back up and make everything easier to get to.
Right.
So yeah,
So,
definitely go check out Knitty.
yeah, and Amy, she's like a software person or something, isn't she? I mean, she understands all that stuff pretty well. I don't remember what her background was, but it seemed like it was something in the computer area.
So I think she was actually an editor, and it was her then husband who he was
Okay.
the software guy.
Right.
So, and he actually I think still works on her site.
Yay, cool.
So
Cool.
yeah.
So someone asked what the last shawl that you showed with the Freia Frida yarn, what the name of that shawl is.
It's nameless.
Okay.
So far it's nameless. But it will be part of my current ebook subscription. So you can find it there if you happen to have purchased that, or if you need a place to watch for it, that's where to watch for it.
So one of the things that I like about your knitting is that you push yourself outside of your boundaries often. Each piece you're trying something different and new and pushing your abilities as far as a designer. Can you show some of that type of stuff?
Thank you.
What do you have?
Well, let's see. What do I have? Hang on. Okay. So this was a project for my book, and it's all over lace. It's sort of like a lace sweatshirt in a way.
That's very pretty.
And thank you. It starts from the top down. So, and it's knit all in one piece. And it has shoulder straps down the sleeves.
Wow.
This is called the saltgrass pull. And it's actually, it's shaped kind of like a Gansey. And it has a little tiny bit of an underarm gusset.
Mm-hmm.
And because it's all over lace, I hid all of the short row shaping inside the lace pattern.
Wow.
So there's a little bit in the front. This part is the front, and the higher part is the back. So there's some short row shaping in pattern in here, and it's a twisted stitch lace pattern. So
that's brilliant.
Thank you. So that was something I hadn't really done before.
Wow.
And then of course it goes down to the sleeve down here. There's a little point on the end of the sleeve.
Right. It doesn't just
so
it has a point. It comes to a delicate, purposeful end. Yes. Beautiful.
Yeah. So this is actually a sewn bind off around the edge because details.
Mm-hmm.
It's the sewn Kitchener bind off, which gives that really nice rounded edge.
Right.
There. And so it's all sewn around to this area, and then you continue knitting this little part down to the point. So that was fun to work on.
And what is that called?
That one is the saltgrass pull.
Okay, I like that. That's going on my list.
Thank you.
I gotta knit that.
So this was kind of another fun one. This is called Neoma's shawl. And I just wanted to do something a little bit different because it's feather and fan. And there's so much feather and fan. So I made it sort of 2 layers here.
Uh-huh.
So there's that top brown layer and then an under layer of pink.
Very cool.
And being all about the geeky details, of course, I did a pink stripe up top here. So when you go and pick up stitches for the pink, you pick up the stitches in that pink stripe.
Oh, cool.
So you can tell which stitches to pick up.
Right. I love that kind of stuff. That's just
kind of fun.
so awesome.
Me too. I love the geeky parts of
I do
it.
too. And unless you showed somebody, they don't even know because it's the underlying, it's the basic structure, the underlying structure.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Now, I want to ask
Yeah.
you a question. Let's say you're doing a multiple that's like maybe 16 or 20 stitches, quite a few, and you have a lot of those multiples across the row. I usually tell people put markers between each multiples, of course, but you can put markers within the multiples. You can actually draw on your
Okay.
chart. You can draw on your chart where you want to put additional markers. So if it's too many stitches for you to try to see where you are in the multiple, you can break it up
You
into
could.
smaller sections. It is okay to do that.
Oh, yeah. There's no cheating. I mean,
Yes, exactly.
do whatever makes it easier for you. And in fact, actually, that can save you from some pretty serious mistakes. I mean, that would have actually saved me from the mistake that led me to learn how to do lace surgery,
Right.
cut it out and do it.
Yes.
Because I had a really open work pattern and there was a lot of lattice in there. And within each repeat, I mean, I think the repeats were about 18 stitches wide. So within that, there was a lot of lattice, and I put the solid part, I had it sort of moved over maybe 6 stitches, and I didn't even notice because my lattice looked so nice. So yeah, it really would have helped to have markers around the solid part, definitely.
Mm-hmm. That's the thing about lace knitting, and I find it also in double knitting as well. Is that you don't see the mistakes often right away. It's usually a few rows down, then all of a sudden you go, "How come I never noticed that before?" You look every
Mm-hmm.
row and you don't see it until it's 2 or 3 rows down, or maybe even more, and then all of a sudden it's just blinking red light. I'm a big mistake here.
Yes, yes. So true.
Yep. Okay, one of the things that you talked about when you were at our retreat that I really loved, we were talking about styles of charting. And you were talking about
Yes.
what you see is what you knit versus what you see is what you get. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Absolutely. So there are several styles of charting. And if you're a cable knitter and you have done a lot of texture work, then you're probably really familiar with what you see is what you get. So basically, the chart looks exactly like the front of your finished item will look. So on a chart for, say, a textured object, you'll see a purl line for where you're knitting on the reverse side. But when I started knitting lace and I was doing patterning on both sides, my brain was almost exploding because of the way I read charts, having to turn it around in my head.
Mm-hmm.
Because I read charts just by remembering which way the stitches go. So I look at the chart and I think, oh, the stitch goes to the right or it goes to the left. And so turning it around in my head was just too much. And I found this old German book that had a different type of charting, which I call what you see is what you knit. So whatever of the symbols that you see, that is what you're going to be knitting. So like if you're on the wrong side and there's a knit, you're just going to knit. If there is a purl, you're going to purl it. So you'll see in the key that a knit stitch is always a knit stitch, a purl stitch is always a purl stitch. You don't reverse them. So I think it makes it a lot easier for people to work, especially two-sided lace. And I know, I mean, it did for me, like hugely easier. So I use that charting convention when I'm doing lace. And when some of my designs have both lace and texture, so I try to give both types of charts so that the people who are more used to reading the what you see is what you get can look at that chart and see what the texture is going to look like.
So
in a
it's
nutshell.
just how your brain functions. You know, some people's brains see it this way and some people's brains don't see it that way. And so it just looks like a jumbled up mess to them.
Yes.
And like you say, you know, it's like a make
Yes.
one right on the right side of the work is completely different than a make one right on the wrong side of the work. It's not, you know, and you have to twist it around. And every time you're going, now I got to figure this out every single time. And so so for a person who has a chart that is what you see is what you knit, there's nothing wrong with them taking that and converting it into a chart. Is what you see is what you see. Yeah, I'm sorry. What you see is what you get. You can make it into a what you see is what you knit chart. You can mark on your chart. It's okay to do that.
Yes. Yes, you could definitely do that.
Yeah.
So what you see is what you knit. Somebody described it one time as a charted example of what written instructions would be. And I thought that was a really good way to explain it, because if you're reading the written instructions, it's not going to say on the wrong side row, knit, and then have little, abbreviations at the top that says, well, on the wrong side row, if it says to knit, you should purl. So, so this is basically just charting out what the written instructions would say. So if that is why you like to use written instructions, for instance, then that is a really good charting method to use.
Yes.
It makes it a lot easier.
Yes. Okay, let's move on. That was good. Let's see, what do you have to show next?
Okay, so let me grab this. I have bins of stuff all over my floor here. This is Artesian, and if anybody is thinking of just a nice little simple one skein shawl to try out lace, this is a really good one. It does use short rows, but it's just like super simple, and however large your skein of yarn is or small your skein of yarn is, you can sort of do more or fewer sections, whichever you prefer. So there's that.
That's very nice. That looks like it would be elegant on.
It works really well, especially in like a silk or linen or something like that. That's really drapey. So, and this is a squishy shawl. It's one of. Let's see if I can get the lace up there. Can you see the bottom?
Right there. That whoop, down a little bit.
Okay.
That's gorgeous. That looks like antique lace.
So this one, it's here's what it kind of looks like. My last ebook that I did was a resizable shawls book. So each of the patterns has ways to resize it, and you can do them in pieces and sort of move things around. And so this one was sort of the pattern hack for a much more complicated shawl. So it was like a half pie shaped shawl. And then I did this one that just has the nice edging and a really simple top. And it's from wool that's grown in Washington. It's Harmony Fields. Nice. And so this one has a story too. Last summer, my younger son, who's a trumpet player, was at a music program in Bellingham, Washington. And my husband and I drove up to get him at the end so we could hear his concert. And I met this woman at the farmer's market in Bellingham, and she had some yarn. So I was fondling her yarn. And so I did this design from her yarn, and I got to see pictures of her sheep and everything. They're very cute.
Yeah. It's when you get to know the name of the sheep, the particular sheep that your wool came from. So there's a couple comments here. Dolise is asking, is high desert one piece, or is there no midway grafting?
No, High Desert is one piece.
Okay.
There is no grafting in it.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then Champ Smith says, I can see the value of what you see is what you knit, but what I like about what you see is what you get is it works for flat work, but especially for in the round. Yeah, so what you see is what you get. You can use that for flat or in the round versus what you see is what you knit is just for the design, whether it's flat or in the round. You can't convert it to in the round.
That is true. Though when you take a what you see is what you get pattern, you're going to have to convert it a little bit anyway, though, because you're not going right to left, left to right. You're always going right to left.
Right.
So, but yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, by no means am I mandating a way to
Right.
to use charts. It's whatever you like. We all have different learning styles.
That's why I wanted to bring it up, because
I like lots of options.
Yeah, everyone's brain works differently. There's no one size fits all.
Absolutely.
Okay,
yeah.
Here's another one from Champ. What kind of short rows do you prefer? That's a great question.
I love German short rows. So when I found out about German short rows, I fell deeply and madly in love. And so pretty much everything now I use German short rows on, except for this. The top of this is shaped with wrap and turn. And I just do wrap and turn because I don't even have to pick up the wraps afterwards. The wrap just sort of disappears into the background.
Right, in garter stitch, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I use short rows a lot, and I use all different kinds of short rows. It depends on what I'm knitting. Just like that, if I'm using garter stitch, I do a wrap and I don't pick it up because the wrap blends in right with the purl bumps. You can't see it. In fact, it looks nicer than if you pick it up. If you pick it up, it makes it stand out. You can see where the short row ended, whereas if you don't pick it up, it just blends in. But I like German short rows, Japanese short rows. It depends on my mood and what I'm making. They all work nice,
So I actually have kind of a funny story about short rows, and that is that I used to not do Japanese short rows correctly, so I thought that I really liked them. And then when I found out you're supposed to slip that first stitch when you turn it over, I ended up not liking them. And what I realized was I was actually doing sort of a modified Sunday short row.
Mm-hmm.
So Carol Sunday has her method where you put a piece of waste yarn in instead of a pin. Uh-huh. So what I really love is those, it's uses a pin like a Japanese short row, but then you do not slip the first stitch when you turn it around like the Sunday short row.
Right.
So that's another one of my favorites, and they end up nice and tight.
Yeah.
Which makes them disappear, thankfully.
Yes. Okay, let's see what else you have to show. I know you have more knitting.
Okay, I do. Just a sec. Let me lean over here. So, this is my Williwaw cardigan.
A cardigan, lovely.
Mm-hmm. So it is, it has an interesting construction.
Hold it still for a second.
Oh, so this is the back.
That's gorgeous.
So this starts in the back here with a provisional cast on.
Uh-huh.
And then it's knitted side to side on the top, so you're knitting it this way. And then you pick up stitches on the bottom.
Oh, and go down.
Mm-hmm. So right under the lace here, you pick up stitches.
Okay, hold it still.
And then you knit down.
Hold it still for a second. Oh, yes, I can see the stitches now. Uh-huh. That's beautiful. Yeah.
So it's asymmetrical. So you can see up top here.
Very nice.
You can see it.
Yes.
So that one was, it's called Williwaw, which is a strong wind on water. So it's like a wind that rushes down off of the mountains across water. And pardon me leaning over.
Now,
Okay,
while you're getting
so
that piece, Evelyn has a question. She says,
okay.
do you ever use beads?
I do. Sometimes I use lots of beads, and sometimes I just use them on the hemline. So I was really into beads for a while, and I use them on everything, and I haven't been using them that often, but I do use them, and I like size 60 seed beads. So they have a nice big hole. They go over anything from like a lace weight up to a worsted weight. I can get them on a worsted weight. It's difficult, but it's possible.
So do you put them on with a crochet hook, or do you pre-string them?
I always use a crochet hook, or I only pre-string if I'm going to work like a patterning in beads. So for instance, if you've seen some of those wristlets that have the bead patterning in them,
Right.
like just a chart with designs, you're knitting tight enough so that the beads will stay in the right place. But I find that if you pre-string, a lot of your beads can move around within the work. So I like to do a crochet hook, or I also place them with super floss.
Right, but it's the same method, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So it goes over both legs of the stitch, and then it doesn't move around any place.
Right.
And the other good thing about it is that if you don't pre-string, the beads won't move up and down your yarn and damage your yarn.
Exactly.
So
wear it out.
that can be a problem. Yeah. Yeah. So any other questions?
Well, Carol, she says, what's the name of your current book, ebook?
It is 9 Lives, Shawls for Changing Times.
Okay.
And there are going to be 9 shawl patterns in it.
And you're still working on it, right? It's in process.
I am still working on it. So the way I do my subscriptions is I set a period of time, and then within that period of time, the patterns are delivered. So you get them as they come out. And this one was the first one. This is Seismic. So being from the San Francisco Bay Area, So onwards.
Yes. So that ebook, people can already subscribe to it, right? It's already out. It's just
right.
Yes. So they don't have to wait for you to finish it. They can subscribe now.
Right.
And then as your patterns come out, they get them delivered to them.
That is correct.
Yes.
And we knit the patterns in my Ravelry group, and it is the nicest group of people. We have a great community, and the moderators are wonderful. It's like a really kind, supportive space.
A family. A family.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, it is.
Okay, let's see.
Okay, this is from last year. This is my mystery shawl from last year. And it is called Cathedral Grove.
Wow.
So this one has, remember I was talking about how I try to do what you see is what you get. Had charts in. If there's texture, I think you maybe can see on here that there are cables in here.
Oh yes, isn't that gorgeous? So beautiful.
Yeah. Thanks. So those have an alternate chart. in case you want to use the what you see is what you get.
Right.
So it uses all sorts of different stitches. This down here, this is a very low contrast version, but there are lots of high contrast ones you can see too.
That's just gorgeous. Yeah, so if people want to see
Thank
these
you.
in other colors, they can go on Ravelry and look at that
Yes.
pattern and see all the people who've knit them and look at all the different
Yes.
yarns and colors and what people have done. Yes. Isn't that fun to see what people do with your patterns? Don't you love it?
Love it. Yes.
Yes, yes.
It's funny because sometimes people will say, "Oh, I hope you don't mind I changed it," and I just like, that's the greatest thing. I love that. I mean, that's the
Exactly.
best thing about knitting is that you get to make it your own exactly the way you want it to be. So
Yes.
I think that's really cool.
Yes, and you're enabling
Yeah.
them. What you are is you're an enabler. You're enabling
Yes.
them to do their own thing, you know? That's very awesome. I love it. And I love it when people really take off and do something, you know, that's quite at a tangent.
Oh, I do too.
Yeah, yes, I love that.
Me
Okay.
too.
Let's see what you have next. Do you have any of the ones that have like a central motif on the back?
Do you mean the ones where I did a square
Yes.
and then
Yes. Yeah.
I can, if you want to wait 1 minute, I can go grab one.
Okay. Okay. Those are very pretty. We'll wait. We're
okay. Okay. So I'll be right back.
Yes.
I'll be.
So, you know, Romi also, she teaches classes also, and she also does retreats and things like that. So if you ever think that you would like to have her come to your guild or your group, you can contact her, and her contact is on all of her patterns, her Ravelry page. She has her contact information, and you can ask her to come and do a retreat for your group. She actually came to the Fresno retreat last year. She was the instructor, and that's where I made this. It was so fun. And I went with the intention, I had something else I was knitting because I don't consider myself a shawl knitter. And so I had no intentions of making a shawl. I was just going to go and visit with my friends and listen to Romi teach. Well, I ended up making this, and I absolutely love it. And I became addicted to Romi's designs. Her attention to detail and her adventuresome designing spirit is so fun. And every single one of her shawls has something different that will attract you. So let's see. Here she's coming back again.
Okay.
There she is. Hello. So I was telling them how you teach at retreats and you teach classes, and people can contact you through Ravelry, or you always have your contact information up. So, okay.
I do. And you can find me on Instagram. The best place actually is in my Ravelry group because there are all sorts of people there and incredibly helpful, wonderful people. So here's one. I don't know how well you can see that because it's kind of against
the star in the center.
Yeah, that. So it's this is. It starts right in the center, right here. And then it's worked as a square doily. And then
yes, I saw it.
Two of the bottom sides are bound off. And then the top part, two of the sides are continued out, so it has wings.
That's beautiful. And that's big, huh?
It is very big. And this is actually the smaller size. So there's a size that has longer wings than this.
And that's something you do in a lot of your patterns, is you make a variety of sizes.
I do. I really like doing that because not everybody is going to be the same size and shape. So I like people to be able to have the size that they like. So I always try to put in repeatable charts into my designs. I had a whole book that was sort of based on the idea of being able to resize however much you wanted, but a lot of my other patterns have at least one chart where you can just keep repeating it. So if you have more yarn, you can have a giant shawl.
I'm going to just quickly go over and share my screen. I am on your Ravelry page that shows all your designs, and I just want to show this, okay? So
Okay.
we won't see you for a minute. We're going to see. So what I want you to see here is all these beautiful, can you see these gorgeous, unbelievably beautiful pieces of work? And they just go on and on and on. They're just gorgeous. And there's 6 pages of these. That was page 1. Let's go to page 2. Here's page 2. This one here, do you see that's the one she was showing us a little while ago? Aren't they gorgeous? Ice Queen, that was in Knitty, wasn't it?
It was, yes.
Yes, I remember that one. 2007, Knitty, 2007. Oh my gosh, 13 years ago!
So long ago.
Oh my goodness. This is the one she was just showing here with the central motif, see here? And she has several that are like that. Here's another one with a central motif that she works out from. I think those are very intriguing. Here's the one she was showing us with the short rows. This one is in her book, The Manzanita Tea. Here's Reciprocate. That's what I have on. I have the little mini version of that on. I'll show it to you in a second. So if you go to Ravelry and just put in Romi Hill, all of these come up. And they're just stunning. Okay, let's go back to Romi and me. And let me show you this. It's just mini. Let me just show me so I can show the whole thing. Isn't that cute? So I just put it on like this. You can, and it's weighted absolutely perfectly, so I don't even need to put anything on the back to keep it on my shoulders. The way it's balanced between the wings and the front there. And I'm sure when you make the big one, you would wear it like, you might wear it like this if you made the big one, or you might, do where you wrap it around your neck a few times. But I just like it like this, and I wear it over this black top. And it's just stunning. I get so many comments on this. So
that's so cool to hear.
It's one of my favorite things. Okay, that was a little commercial in the middle. We can move forward now.
Thank you. That's really sweet. Thank you. So what would you like to see?
What is your favorite piece?
My favorite piece.
It's whichever one
you're
currently
have
working on, probably.
Yeah, it changes all the time.
Yes. Every new thing I make, I go, oh, this is my new favorite thing.
Yes, exactly. I guess if I get to the end of making something and I don't hate it and never want to see it again, it's my favorite piece.
Yes.
So
yes.
A lot of times I'm just like, oh God, I don't want to see it ever again.
Right, you're done with it.
Strangely enough, I love my Seismic shawl. Because I just love the colors and I don't know, it just comes together for me. Too. I was in the right mood when I knit it, and it's just squishy and cozy. So yeah, I think that's probably my favorite at the moment.
Another thing that we could talk about is different yarns for shawls. So it depends on the effect that you want in your shawl and what the purpose of it's going to be. Whether you're going to use silk or something with silk in it, or bamboo, or any of the rayon type fabrics mixed with wool or cotton or 100% wool. They all have different effects in how they drape and block. Oh, and also, can you talk a little bit about blocking? So let me give you my spiel on blocking first. A lot of people, the first time they encounter blocking ever is with lace shawls. Because before that, they knit a sweater or a hat or gloves and they didn't feel like they needed to block it. When they're done, right? But then I know, but you know what I mean, though, And so then they knit a lace shawl. Well, it looks like nothing. You can't see the lace until you block it. So, but in lace shawls, oftentimes you stretch the fabric when it's wet to open it up. So then people think, well, blocking means stretching. And they think that blocking and stretching are synonymous, but they're not. Blocking just means getting the fabric wet somehow with steam, water, a damp towel, however, getting it moist, and then putting it in the position that you want it to be when it's dry. Sometimes that means stretching, but if it's a sweater or a hat, you don't want to stretch the brim of a hat out, because then it's going to always be loose and floppy,
So true. So true.
Or ribbing on a sweater.
I like to tell people you want to treat your swatch however you're going to treat your finished object. So you should always swatch and you should always block your swatch. And it should always be blocked however you're going to care for the final object. So for instance, if it's a sweater, then you want to block it to measurements and see how that looks when it's drying. If it's going to be a shawl, then you're going to stretch it out as far as you can and then see how it acts. And yarn has so much to do, fiber and yarn construction and everything has so much to do with your final project and the final outcome. I guess, so you were asking about like what types of yarns to use.
Right.
First, you want to see what the designer used and see how it looks with whatever the designer used. And understand, I mean, there are a few things you can understand right off. Like if somebody uses merino and it's like, it's maybe a 2-ply yarn or, mostly 2-ply merino, it's always going to shrink back after you block it. So merino has a lot of memory. There's going to be less memory in superwash merino, but pretty much those two, we kind of had a joke going, Dyer and I, that when you do a shawl out of merino, it's going to end up the same size as it was when you finish the shawl, but it will just look like the lace is more open. But if it was this big, it's going to be that big when the merino springs back.
Right.
So it's the same thing that makes it great for sweaters and socks and gloves and hats when it's springing back is going to make it smaller for shawls. So you can use anything that you want, but you just need to be kind of aware before you start. So if you do want to use a really squishy, springy yarn, you're going to want to go up needle sizes and get extra yardage. And also the reverse is true. So if somebody's knit something in wool and you want to use silk, you're going to get a larger product. Right. And there are two reasons for that. One being that when you're working with it, it doesn't stretch out. So you're not getting any stretching while you're working with it, and you're going to get a bigger product at first. And then once you have blocked it out, it's going to hold its block better. So it's going to be the reverse. You might actually want to go down a couple of needle sizes possibly.
I tell people it's like hair. Let me put it where we can see you and I. In your hair, when it's wet, if you put it around a roller and then you allow it to dry, now it'll dry with the curl in it. If you put it around a roller and it's not wet, it might retain depending on how long you leave the roller in, it might retain a little bit of the curl, but it's going to go back to what it wants to be. But once you get it wet and you give it a curl, it'll stay with that curl until you get it wet again. And the different, Sue M brings up a point. about different sheep breeds have different amounts of springiness. It depends on the crimp
That's so
of the
true.
wool.
Yeah.
So merino has a very, very, very fine crimp, and so it has a lot of spring to it, whereas the long wools, but the longer the hair, the longer the crimp, the wider the crimp. They're like radio waves. The short fibers have very, very frequent waves. The longer fibers have bigger, slow waves. The bigger, slow waves, like, for example, mohair has a really big, slow wave, and so it doesn't have a lot of recoil. So you can think about it that way. Let's see, there was some other. This is from Joanne Young. She says, can you wet block plotulopi yarns? I don't know what plotulopi, but lopi yarns you can wet block. I mean, they're just wool.
You can. So are you thinking maybe of like the ones that are sort of like pencil roving, possibly?
Maybe, but you can still wet block those.
So once the yarn is worked into a pattern and it's wet, it's actually pretty strong. So yeah, you can wet block them.
Now,
so the other thing to do is to make sure that if you're concerned about whether or not you can wet block a yarn, just do a swatch and do whatever you're going to do to your final garment to that swatch and see how it works.
That's the real answer.
And then you'll have a really good idea.
Just swatch. The bad word, swatch. Yes.
I know it is, but they're so useful and they can be fun.
So Sue M says, and this is something I talk about in my other videos, she says, lace looks good with 2-ply yarns because 2-ply yarns, this is a 2-ply, they're flat. Whereas a 3-ply or multiple ply, you can see the end of the yarn, my fingers here, they make a round yarn, which is really good for cables or things with texture. But lace, you like it to be smooth usually, and so 2-ply lay next to each other. They lay flat. That's why 2-ply works good. But you can use any yarn for lace. Just swatch first to see if you like it.
Yeah. I mean, if you like it, you can use anything at all. So one thing that you might run into is because the multiple plies are fatter, you might want to use a little bit of a larger needle, but I mean, you can still use them and you can figure out a way to make them look good.
Now, Evelyn wants to know if you have anything that you can show that has beads on it.
Let's see. Let me go through my stuff here. I have a big box.
Oh, that's pretty. Looks like air.
So this one has beads in the on the edging, and it also has beads in the center motif.
Okay, hold it real still.
Can you see them?
I can't see the. Oh yes, I see them. They're hard to see though.
So they're here.
Yes, I see them. That's pretty, very pretty.
So this one is Fiore Autunnali, and there's actually a blueprint class for this shawl. It's also one of those ones that starts with the center motif.
Oh yes, that's beautiful. Beautiful. So light.
So it also has beads in the bind off here. I don't know if you can see on the bind off.
Yes.
So I tend to do beads that kind of blend in a little bit more. You do have, here's a mohair shawl, and I used kind of bluish beads on
pretty
the mohair. Yeah. And this one is Trieste. So
gorgeous.
I do love my mohair.
Yeah.
And I do have others that use beads as well. And now I have another one in here.
She actually has mountains of knittings, you guys. You should see how
I
many
do.
she has.
I have so many. Here's one that just uses them in the bind off. And it's just to sort of weigh the bind off down a little bit.
Right. So they have a function. The beads have a function.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it makes it hang a little bit better.
Uh-huh.
So they're not very, like, they're not terribly obvious beads, but I try not to put too many beads where you might sit back and get them in your back, sort of like molded into your skin.
Right.
If you're sitting in a chair.
Right. Or caught on the chair, you know. You
exactly.
go to get up and the bead stays stuck on the chair.
Yes, which is another reason not to pre-string, especially in lace.
Mm-hmm.
So there are some patterns that have long strands of pre-strung beads in there. And I know, like for me, I am clumsy enough to know absolutely for a sure fact that every time I walk by a door, I'll catch it on the doorknob or something
Right.
like that. And
exactly.
Yeah. So
that's me too. I'm lucky that I don't walk into the wall, you know.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. I can't walk anywhere without knocking multiple things over as it is. So
okay, we're gonna start bringing it to. Oh, sorry, somebody else has a question. Eva Meta says, "Do you have anything where you've used cashmere for lace knitting?"
I do. I did a version of my Beautiful Together shawl in it, and I don't actually have it right here next to me, but you can see the version. You can see it online. Mm-hmm. If you look under Beautiful Together, there's a tan version, and that is cashmere. And then I do actually have one. Hang on just a sec. This one is from my new lace knitting book.
Oh, wow.
And this is art yarns. So it's a cashmere single.
Wow.
And it is the softest, most wonderful thing ever. Wow. So this uses a single skein of it. And again, it has the beads at the bottom to help weigh down the bind off because it's so light. Mm-hmm. It just would pretty much float away.
Just gorgeous. That is beautiful. I love the color too.
Yeah, I do too. They make such beautiful yarns.
Sue M
art
says,
yarns.
Sue M says she did hand spun cashmere and silk lace. So Sue's
beautiful.
Sue's a fiber art, you know, she likes to spin, and so she's very knowledgeable. Mm-hmm. She's one of my usual people, and she's very knowledgeable. I use her a lot as far as learning about different breeds and fibers and things. You know, she's very knowledgeable about that. So was there anything that we missed that you wanted to show? Oh, blooper. Do you have a blooper?
Yes. Yes. I fixed it, though. I hope you don't mind. So this is another project. This is a skirt that I did for my book. And when I was getting all the samples ready and I washed all of them and I put them away, and I was absolutely paranoid that they were going to get messed up or something. So I put them away. I put them out of the sun in a box, and I went back to take out my samples, and this had oxidized.
Oh my.
So I apparently I did not used to rinse out wool wash. Mm-hmm. And I hadn't rinsed out the wool wash on this. And I don't know if it's because this is cotton, but it had oxidized, so the front of it, wherever it was touching air, turned yellow.
Oh no.
And I almost just died right there.
Oh no.
So This has actually been through the washing machine twice.
Wow.
Because I figured at that point, I mean,
you have
I
nothing
might
to
as
lose.
well.
Yes.
I had nothing to lose. So it went through the washing machine twice. And it had a very happy outcome
Mm-hmm.
because I was able to wash the yellow out. But now I always, always wash my wool wash out. So that is your cautionary tale. Don't be
Yes.
like me.
Yeah.
Wash your wool wash out.
Yeah. Well, I'm one of those people, like, I don't wear makeup and I don't do fancy things to my hair. I just never
Me neither.
have. I feel uncomfortable when I do that. It's like it's not really me.
I do too.
And
Yeah.
when I go to get my hair done, they always put all this stuff in my hair, and I go home and wash it out. I can't stand stuff in my hair. I want it to just feel like my hair, not sticky or stiff or, you know. It's the same way with my wool, though. I don't leave anything in it. I just, you know,
That is a good way to be. Yes.
I have to
Don't
rinse
leave
it out.
anything in your wool. You never know.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, well, I want to say thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you for being my guest today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
And everybody
It was
has
a lot of
really
fun.
enjoyed this, seeing your beautiful work, and they'll go to Ravelry and they're going to purchase patterns from you.
Thank you.
And maybe we could have you back in a year or so and see you again. That would be fun. Catch up with you.
I would love that.
See what you've
I
done
would
by
love
next
that.
year.
Yeah.
Okay. So
That sounds great.
happy knitting, and
Thank you.
come back again and watch us and see who else I'm going to be interviewing. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. And let's see, we had Sylvia on here a few weeks ago, Sylvia Harding. So you're my
love her.
Yeah, you're my second lace person. So that's very cool. Very cool. Okay, so I'm going to wrap it up. Let everybody go. Have a good afternoon. Stay safe. Wherever you are, just stay safe. That's the most important thing. And keep on knitting.
Definitely.
Okay? Love you all. Happy knitting.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye-bye.